this line of defense, these gloves, these gowns that you're putting on are not enough. I mean, these are the gloves we're talking about. CDC doesn't say what you have to use, right? You could use ones like this, a little thicker, traditional old vinyl glove, or a nylon glove, right? The guidelines here that I have, that I read from the CDC, don't say anything about what kind of glove to use.
No, so it's very interesting. If you, I think there are two questions. First of all, are the guidelines good enough? But even if those guidelines are good enough, and I think it's reasonable to raise questions about that, they are vague and they are not easy to follow. So you start with the choice of gloves. These are the nitrile gloves. They're very good. They're thick, they're stretchy, they don't cause allergic reactions, and if you puncture them, then you can see the hole because they're purple.
This is a vinyl?
That's ideal. The vinyl, on the other hand, is the kind of thing that you'd see someone, they are widely used in hospitals, the kind of thing you'd see someone wearing if they were making you a sandwich in a deli. They're very brittle, and even getting them on, it's extremely easy to tear a hole in them, right?
Wow.
They're not very tactile. They're quite clunky.
Hard
they don't
to move
cling
your
to,
fingers within
exactly.
them. All right, then that brings us to
the
nylon.
Latex gloves.
So the latex,
these are the latex ones, the natural substance. The problem with these ones is they cause allergic reactions, and they're quite thin. They're relatively fragile compared to the nitrile ones, but they stick to your skin very well, and they're very easy to do dexterous things in. So there are advantages to the latex, and there are advantages to the nitrile. I would say the vinyl gloves are really not the best ones to be using.
Not the best, but you're saying commonly used.
Commonly used, commonly available in hospital. I would say that for looking after an Ebola patient, you would want either a latex glove or a nitrile glove.
Okay, so let's look at the ones you have on then, the latex gloves, right?
Yeah.
All right, put them on both hands. So let's just say you're a nurse and you're actually treating an Ebola patient. The CDC guidelines, and let me just say them here, the assumption is the outside of your gloves is contaminated, okay? So then they tell you how to take them off. And why don't you just, we'll show you on camera what you're supposed to do. First take one off, put it in the other glove, and then remove it.
So the process is to take the glove, and again, you can tear holes in gloves very easily. If you imagine this is now all covered in blood, it could be much more difficult to do than this. You can imagine how easy it would be to get contaminated, and then you get a thumb under there and lift the other glove off, okay, and then you can dispose them. The difficulty with that is that it's easy to make a mistake unless you're trained well. So the lesson we learn from this is not that we shouldn't be doing this, that there's some other perfect system, but rather, first of all, the guidelines don't tell you what to do when you make a mistake.
No.
And secondly, they're vague and they're difficult to follow.
Okay, so because what you just showed me, all right, you did it, you took one off, and by the way, the assumption would be that you would have a long sleeve shirt that would be covering you. But theoretically, if you're around an Ebola patient, your body could be covered in diarrhea, in blood, in vomit. You're covered in this. You take one off, then you've got a naked hand out there because they tell you to do the gloves first. You take off the other glove. Assume that it doesn't fling for a second and hit your hand with some of that Ebola-infected body fluid. Then what happens? Then your hands are naked, and you're wearing a gown. How are you supposed to remove that?
You've got a gown, face mask, so mask and eye protection that are potentially contaminated. And we say potentially contaminated. These are patients that hemorrhage, they get vomiting and get diarrhea. So it's quite easy to spill a vomit bowl, to get bodily fluids all over you. And the issue is then you've got bare hands contaminated. The idea is that you work from the back. So you take off your gown from the back, you take off your mask from the back, and you take off your eye protection from the back. And in theory that works, but unless you have a team that is drilled in moving around that room, carrying bowls around, no one's touched you, there hasn't been any spray, there hasn't been any splash, you haven't brushed against a wall.
I think it's pretty hard to imagine. You're talking about, again, at this point, who knows what's on you, and your hands aren't, you've taken off these gloves.
So the logic in not wearing a hazmat suit is hazmat suits are really difficult to wear, they're very hard to do things in, and it's hard to get lots of people wearing them well. So if you ascribe to that logic, and it's not a bad logic, then you have to say, the CDC should have to say, how do we train healthcare workers to do this? What training materials are available? What drills? How much training? And should they look after other patients?
Very quickly before we go, the Dallas mayor says they are not going to put down her dog.
I think that's sensible. I think not because we don't think dogs carry Ebola, because you don't know. So that dog should be isolated, quarantined. We're good at
quarantine it, but don't put it down.
Quarantine the dog, observe it, and see what happens.
But the point is the Ebola virus spreads from animals to people. Dogs get Ebola. We don't know that it transfers. You would not think it was fair to assume the dog would not be a risk at all.
No, I think we can definitely test the dog for Ebola, and it seems to me unnecessary. I mean, this lady's sick. Her family are going to be very worried. To then kill the family dog, we can quarantine that dog safely. That's what I'd do.